Welcome to the Watchback, our second ever only Watchback show. This idea is based around pay-per-views or big wrestling events that are worth reminiscing about. But with so much content these days, it is actually hard to get back to watching old stuff. Joining me for this special occasion is Sam Schipman from the Power Bombshells. What's going on, Sam?
Hey, thanks for having me.
And then Keila Cash from The Wrap is also joining us. What's up, Keila?
Hello, hello, hello.
I want to shout out Mel Gray, who was also supposed to be a part of this, but I had to change it up to push it up 1 week, which bumped up against her schedule because we have a third Watchback coming out in about a month or maybe 3 weeks surrounding the first Omega Okada match preceding All in Texas that I need to get to. And I just needed to start research on that one much more sooner. So thanks to Mel, who is very graceful in not making me feel too bad about screwing it up, because I know how badly she wanted to be on this. But Sam, you and Mel are back on Sunday with Power Bombshells, and you guys will have a pretty big show there.
Yes, we will.
All right, so let's talk about the idea, or actually let's go back. Where were you all in October 28th, 2018? How did you watch this? Where were you in your headspace as a human? Let's start there, and Sam, you can go first.
Oh, wow. What was I doing in 2018? Obviously still watching way too much wrestling. That was actually in 2018. That was not long after I'd started getting into New Japan and realizing, like, hey, I mean, I was watching indie wrestling, so like I knew there was stuff outside of WWE, but then I watched New Japan and I was like, I've been missing this type of wrestling for how many years? And so I was really getting into New Japan at that point. And I'm still really into New Japan, and it's still one of my favorites. So I was, kind of in that headspace where I was like, oh, WWE is doing this thing, but these things are over here. I have indie wrestling I can go to every month. And so I was expanding my wrestling palette for sure. And so I did watch this live. I did go back, as I mentioned to you and Keila, I did go back and I found where I was live tweeting. So that has never changed. I was live tweeting way back in 2018 about the wrestling I was watching. And so I have some of my, it's actually funny because a lot of my thoughts that I had from that night are still relevant after rewatching. I feel pretty similar about some of the things I said then.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't look back, and I'm sure there's Facebook posts and stuff that I would have had based on this show. I would have wanted to know where my headspace was, but maybe I don't want to know where my headspace was. But I do have some thoughts. Keila, do you remember watching this? Where were you? What were you doing in your wrestling fandom at this point?
Alrighty. So at the time, I was on a full-blown sabbatical from podcasting and blogging about WWE. I did it for 5 years straight. I was getting to be burnt out. And it was in the nick of time before the rails fell off the train at the station after Survivor Series 2018. So I got off just in time before it fell into a ravine. So I did watch Evolution Live on the WWE network. Yes, the actual WWE network.
Same.
Amazing. What an amazing time, right? Where they are trying that they actually see the current television ecosystem that we are in, at least in the United States. They see it probably 5 years too early, and they try to get ahead of it. Well, essentially, at least what I remember the story being is that they knew that television and pay-per-view were changing, and this goes way back with Vince McMahon. Like, he was in a feud with pay-per-view providers for years and years and years, and he always thought that it was very unfair that they had to give up the pay-per-view companies so much of the money in the split. So he was always trying to find ways to get more of a share of the money. And so this goes back to, like, I want to say 1989. The original so not the original. It would have been the second year of the Clash of the Champions was Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. That show was going to be a head-to-head pay-per-view against WrestleMania 5. And the pay-per-view providers wanted that show to be put against WrestleMania 5 so they could show that show and not WrestleMania 5 to teach Vince a lesson. Then Vince catered, and he's like, okay, I agree to the same thing. And then they were like, all right, Ted, because Ted had just bought the company, WCW, we don't need this anymore. However, why don't you run it as a Clash of Champions? Because the previous year they tried to ixnay that because they ran the original Clash of Champions heads up against WrestleMania 4. So they're like, come on, we can spread these wrestling shows out. Like, why are we sabotaging the pay-per-view business? But because they had asked Ted to run this show head-to-head against Vince and then catered to Vince, they're like, just run it as a cable thing. So Vince is going all the way back then to try and figure out how to get more money out of his big shows. So he creates the network as a way to get out of that pay-per-view business and see if he can bring this mythical WWE universe and put it into actual subscriber form. And I remember, I think they had gotten to over 1 million subscribers, but they were pretty stagnant around that point. And it didn't have the same, because, essentially as we move towards whatever TV becomes, you don't want to be so reliant on a television network for your content, because they could dump you at any time. They could stop paying you. They could lowball you. Now, at this point in time, WWE was actually doing the opposite. They got Fox involved. Fox was about to start right after this time frame. So they were actually doing really well. And I think if you put out the WWE network, maybe not even now, because they have Netflix and Peacock and all, like the WWE network was ahead of its time, but I don't even think it works today anyways. But it's just an amazing thing to think about how we all were like, wait, we were paying $50 for these shows and now we only have to pay 10.
Right. Yeah. Yes. That was like the biggest revelation and the biggest like selling point was I can watch pay-per-views for $9.99. And of course they drove that price point home for you.
And the fact it never went up the entire time. Right. They were the anti-Netflix. We're going to say, and $9.99 the entire time. And they have gift cards. And I use them.
They
did.
Yeah.
Gift cards. You could threaten to quit and come back for 99 cents.
Yes.
Just by threatening to quit. Now, you mentioned that they did not have a price change. But right around this time, they're talking about adding a second tier. So for an extra $5, I think, what were you going to get? Well, they were working with these smaller independent organizations. And I think the idea was like, we're just going to do house shows and you get to watch all of these house shows. And we're going to show you wrestling in the UK and in these different geographical areas. And they were going to see if that actually helped grow. And of course, what they were going to see, and this is again back to old Vince McMahon tricks, I'm sure they were going to figure out what the most popular shows were and then go try and buy those companies. I mean, I'm assuming that's what the deal was, because that's what the deal was in 1984. That's how he grabbed certain stars in 1984. We're going to show these free tapes of these wrestlers from other territories, and the ones that resonated, then they're like, okay, we're going to go take them and bring them to WWF. So that's okay. That's where we were. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give us a little bit of a historical timeline, and y'all can interrupt me whenever you want to crack wise about anything, and we'll just move on from there before we get to the actual show of WWE Evolution. Okay, so here's where I begin the Evolution timeline. In my opinion, the Evolution timeline begins when Ronda Rousey gets knocked out by Holly Holm, because that signifies Ronda Rousey's on top of the sports world. She loses. And it's sort of like she may not be into this thing as much as she was, because she finally saw the type of fighter and the type of skill set that she was going to go up against her and be successful So she loses to Holly Holm. She's very unhappy. That fight does tremendous business. And then her next fight is against Amanda Nunes, and she just gets destroyed. So back-to-back fights where the new Mike Tyson and Ronda Rousey is actually becomes a transparent fighter to these styles, because the idea is Ronda's on top, and now all these fighters are just preparing for how do you beat Ronda, and you get two of them back-to-back. And Ronda's not used to losing. She doesn't like losing. Okay, what else can I do? Because this is not fun and I'm in a deep, dark place. Ronda was a wrestling fan. She would show up at PWG shows. Shayna Baszler was kind of the introductory piece to her when it came to pro wrestling. So fast forward to, and now I think we may actually, I'm not sure of this time frame. I'm thinking of 2015. It's probably all within a couple of years, but I'm at WrestleMania 31. The Rock, Triple H, Stephanie are in the ring. My kids are with me, and I just turn to them and I go, Ronda's coming in the ring. Soon enough, The Rock brings Ronda out into the ring, and she does business, and she gets tons of cheers. It feels really cool. Whenever The Rock is at WrestleMania, it is, there's more eyes on it, and now you have this giant MMA star also in the ring with him. And immediately, what are we thinking? We're all fantasy bookers. We all think that we kind of know where things are going. We go, oh, WrestleMania 32, The Rock and Ronda against Triple H and Stephanie. That's where we're going. Not quite. It takes 3 years to get Ronda into the ring, but she does get into the ring. It is her and Kurt Angle, of all people, against Triple H and Stephanie at WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans. So that's where Ronda has her first match, and she's in for a full year. And this is 7 months or six to 7 months post WrestleMania 34 where this show happens. And by this time, she is the Raw Women's Champion. Also around this time is the Mae Young Classic. The second Mae Young Classic is happening right around the time of this pay-per-view, and we will have the finals of the Mae Young Classic on this show. All right, from the July 30th Wrestling Observer, Dave writes that WWE opened the July 24th Raw show in Cincinnati with the announcement of its first ever all-women's pay-per-view show. The show, scheduled for October 28th at Nassau Coliseum, called Evolution, will feature all women under contract to the company who are ready to perform in the ring, including on the NXT and UK rosters. It will also include stars from the past with Lita, Trish Stratus, and Beth Phoenix all announced. So I think originally the idea was that Beth Phoenix was going to be in a match. She was actually one of the announcers. The idea of calling this pay-per-view Evolution, is that like that? To me, it's a negative connotation to call an all-women's pay-per-view Evolution. But I wanted to get both of your takes on this. Sam, what did you think about the name Evolution for this show?
I mean, I don't remember what my reaction was to it at the time as far as the name goes. But looking back at it in 2025, with 2025 eyes, Evolution is not great. Like, wrestling had evolved from, for women, of course, it continues to evolve because that's what all wrestling does. But it feels like it was just kind of a pandering thing, and like it was a buzzword, just to be like, look at this, but it's pink and sparkly and women and girls look over here type of thing.
Keila, what did you think?
I thought that the name of the show was wrong because for the longest time, they said it was a revolution.
Right.
And then it became an evolution, and I was confused. So I'm with Sam. It was giving buzzword, pandering, very marketing heavy. And then I remember when the announcement was made on Monday Night Raw that this was going to be a thing for reasons we already know why. I go to the backstage.
We're gonna get to that elephant in the room in a second.
Yeah. So I go to the backstage segments, and I actually went back to my Facebook posts to read all of them from that time period. And I want to do a direct quote of what I wrote. Let me go back in time and find it.
I wish we had like the Wayne's World like thing where you
Yeah,
go back.
yes.
That
That would be perfect.
Yes. So on July 23rd, 2018, exact time was 8:46 p.m. I said, and I quote, I am really happy that the ladies of WWE are having their own pay-per-view in October. However, I am not here for these super cheesy backstage segments involving the men talking about the historic announcement. It comes off as forced and overly scripted.
There's a moment in this show where Kelly of all people says that she couldn't believe in a million years that there would be an all women's pay-per-view. A million? Really? A million years. Your imagination could not think of having an all women show on WWE. So that's either her saying, yeah, man, WWE moves backwards, or she was, I don't know, just not that smart. Whatever it was, but okay, so I was wondering if anyone remembered the Women's Revolution tagline, and then it's switching to Evolution. The other thing that's really weird and maybe even ironic, and I'm guessing they did not even think about this. Triple H, Ric Flair, Randy Orton, Dave Bautista had a team called Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to promote women's wrestling, those are not the four men who I would relate that name to.
Not at all.
So I'm hoping that was just like a missed thing, that they didn't even think about it, but it was exactly what I thought about when we were watching this show.
It's on brand though for them to like everything it's because the women, it just shows that like this was never a serious thing for them. This was too, which we'll get to, but this was too quiet.
By the way,
quiet. This is to hush the hush fans up as what it is, and so just having it be the same name as that stable, with especially with two of the four men that were in that. Well, I guess really all four of them, but particularly Ric Flair, having him involved, and then having a women's show named the same thing, as especially knowing what we now know about like the plane ride from hell. It's gross.
So we get to and by the way, what I was going to say is they had 7 years to go back to calling this Revolution, but I guess AEW took that name from them. So even if they wanted to do it, they couldn't really do it.
It is snatched now forever.
Yeah. This should have always been like
trademarked.
Yeah, the WWE Revolution.
Immediately.
That's exactly what the show should have been. All right, so we get to a Paul Levesque quote to Sky Sports. It's up to the fans on whether or not this would be a one-time thing, noting that they don't need to do an annual women's only or men's only show. You mean wrestling for about 25 years?
Right.
But can it be a regular show? He said it could if the fans want it to be, and they will decide based on fan reaction. So I guess we blame the fans for there being 7 years between Evolution shows here.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's already on brand. They're going to blame the fans when Evolution 2 fails because they put it on the same time as Cowboy Carter, and the same weekend that the MLB All-Star Game is in town. They also, I mean, I know that maybe me and Keila are like the only people. There's a very small group of us who would want to go to the Braves All-Star Game, Beyonce and women's wrestling. Like I know
in that order.
Right.
Yes.
Right. There's a small group of us, but still it's a very but they're clearly it's to blame the fans because the fans didn't show up, so they must really not want women's wrestling, an all women's wrestling show. They didn't come. We gave them 7 weeks notice.
Okay, let's actually rank this. So wait, the All-Star Game would be on Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday, but that weekend they have the All-Star festivities, like the Futures game, the celebrity softball game.
Okay.
And I think
but then maybe the Miz.
And then, I guess Home Run Derby would be the day after
Monday.
The Monday before.
Or the Monday after. Well, the Monday it would be the Monday before the game, but then the day after Evolution too.
All right, so let's do a ranking. You get to see Beyonce, the Cowboy Carter tour.
Mhm.
You get, if you're a baseball fan, the MLB All-Star Game,
Mhm.
or you get to see Evolution 2. Like, how are you stack ranking those three in order of priority in your life?
I mean, I think you'd have to start with Beyonce, probably.
I think you
Absolutely.
have to start with Beyonce.
I mean, I think you have to.
She's here multiple days. I can pick a day to go. I can go Friday. I can go Saturday. I can say, well, Evolution, I'll see you on Peacock. I can go Sunday.
Right.
Then I can go to the Battery for the All-Star festivities on
Mhm.
Saturday, chill out. And then I can still watch Saturday night's main event on
Mhm.
demand. So that's how I will prioritize my weekend. I have options.
Mhm.
I
Well,
think
and
that's right. I think Beyonce, if you are, see, the problem is that if you don't get a ticket to Beyonce, like, then Beyonce's kind of out of it, because it's not like you can see it anywhere
right,
else.
of course.
Yeah.
So you'd have to get a ticket, and if you're interested, you're getting a ticket.
And-
you're going to Beyonce more.
But then if you're going to Evolution, you have to deal with Beyonce traffic.
Oh, yes. In Atlanta, downtown connector on a Sunday.
Right.
Good luck. Ride MARTA. It's smarter.
But the MARTA doesn't go to Cobb County, so
Unfortunately, it does not. You're out of luck there. You have to drive to Cobb County. I don't even know if the bus is running. The Cobb bus that takes you to the Battery is running on Sunday or Saturday.
I've only been to Atlanta one time, and it was for a very short time. We were hosting a community event in Atlanta, so I was like there. We were there for a day, and then we left. I didn't really get to experience it in any way, though. I will say, now this is not a PG show. While we were in Atlanta and going out and like hanging out and trying to find stuff to do, people kept saying you have to go to the strip club. Like, yeah, this is a business trip. This is a business trip. They'd probably be pretty frowned upon for us to do that. But this was like, 25 years ago. So, but yeah, like, well, I did want to experience it, but unfortunately, we're only there for like a very short time.
You didn't go to Magic City?
No, I did not.
Oh, listen.
Wait, but wasn't there also the Gold Club, Eric Bischoff thing?
Yeah, during that time period.
Was that in the same time? Was that 25 years ago? Or was that
no? It would have been a little bit. It would have been a few years earlier. So actually, it would have been 20 years ago. This is probably like 0506, if I think about it. Okay, so yeah, a little bit of post Eric Bischoff and those guys hanging out at the Gold Club. All right. So after Triple H's comments, we have the debut of Marina Shafir, who is kind of an interesting character in today's wrestling.
Or Marina Schaefer, as I think it was Beth Phoenix called her at some point during the show. When she gets involved, she called her Marina Schaefer.
I'm trying to. Do you want Marina Schaefer from Beth Phoenix, or do you want Nikki Bella with Stephanie Vacquet? Which one do you like better?
Vacquet's got like that little sauce on it. Vacquet, even though I don't know who that is, but Vacquet got a little
like
spice to
France.
it. Yes, Parquet Vacquet. Yes.
Yeah, it's Nikki is a Garcia. She's got. I'm assuming she has some sort of Mexican or Hispanic in her background, like me. But we are both very not Spanish speaking. I can tell. I've never heard her speak Spanish, so maybe I'm just assuming. So it was almost like, when I go see some relatives on a specific side of the family and I go, okay, am I going to try or am I going to overdo it on the other side so they don't ask me, so they don't expect me to speak in like a specific accent? And so she was in between there. I think she was trying to figure it out. What am I supposed to do in front of this audience? Okay, so Shafir on July 26th, I guess she debuted in NXT or maybe on a dark match or something. And I think we'll have a category or a question about what ages badly. I'm not sure if this ages great or poorly. I'm going to probably lean poorly, but Dave Meltzer wrote, one person noted to us that it's really scary how natural these four women are in the ring. She was talking about Rousey. Rousey was very, very good from early on. Shayna Baszler, also very good from early on. Marina Shafir has still not necessarily like grasped that in-ring thing. Though I think there are good things about her character that I really do enjoy. But then the woman who has like disappeared from our ecosystem, Jessamine Duke, like what happened to Jessamine Duke? She's on this show. Where'd Jessamine Duke go?
The last I heard, like, is she still working for Up, Up, Down, Down? Like, I had heard that she was doing, like, a few years ago, I had heard she, like, did some work on that show, and I thought that's what she was still doing, but I'm not sure. Sounds like she just is out of wrestling completely other than working. I mean, obviously, Up, Up, Down, Down involves wrestlers, but, like, it's gaming, so it just sounds like she's completely out of it, but I could be wrong.
So I have a story, being that my Fight Game podcast co-host John LaRocca ran his own independent organization out here in the Bay Area, and it was more so like serious in-ring style. You didn't see a lot of gimmicks. There was like no tag teams. There was very little like outside of the ring stuff. It was like a serious
Like
wrestling style. Not quite Bloodsport, but it had more similarities to Bloodsport than probably anything else. And he had Shayna Baszler in her second ever U.S. Pro Wrestling match. She had wrestled in Reno maybe the weekend before, the month before. Shayna Baszler comes over. They build a match around Shayna Baszler, which also meant that who comes over to the show? None other than Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett was her handler, her mentor, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if he was even maybe her manager back then. And also Jessamine Duke came over. And so I got to meet them, and we all went out after the show to grab dinner before they headed back out to their home. And think about a protective father who just wants to cross his arms and stare holes through everybody, because that's what Josh Barnett was. As a businessman, he was very easy for LaRocca to work with. Obviously Josh Barnett's been in wrestling and MMA for a long time,
right?
But he also was kind of like just stand up, lean against the wall, arms crossed. Everyone knows he's a badass, so no one even really wants to look his way. And Shayna and Jessamine, they just like want to play on their Game Boys, essentially, is like what they want to do. Like they're just hanging out, chit-chatting, but they also got their little Pokemon game or whatever. Like that's what they're doing for kind of wind down time. And it was just fascinating to watch Josh, because I mean, it was almost like a bodyguard, having a bodyguard around. And I was just like, this is really weird, because Shayna and Jessamine could kick all of our asses if anything happened. Like they don't even need Josh,
right?
But Josh is just there like mad dogging everybody. So it was cool. But I always thought Jessamine, I always thought she had a great look for pro wrestling. I thought she had a great look for MMA too, but that was not the greatest sport for her. And I was like, man, she could kind of turn this like real charm that she has as portrayed on television into. But then she just didn't do anything in wrestling. I always thought it was interesting. I wondered why no one has done the wrestling interview with Jessamine Duke. What happened to your career?
I mean, maybe she just want to talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
She's just like, I don't want to. I just want to pretend it didn't happen.
maybe there's trauma involved. Who knows? I just find it interesting that we know what Rhonda is doing, we know what Marina's doing, we know what Shayna's doing, and we haven't heard from Jessamine in a while. All right, so then Meltzer writes, and he's quoting someone who's internally from WWE. Just wait until you see Jess and Marina. All four are tremendous in their own way. Maybe recruiting women MMA fighters is going to be the future of the recruitment process, which never really happened.
No.
You never really saw anybody from the UFC side come back over to WWE. It just kind of stopped. It kind of ended right there.
It's almost like I think that if they tried it now, it might be a little bit different, because WWE is very much into we want viral moments more than we want wrestling moments. Like obviously that's what a lot of Logan Paul, what he does is, I mean, they even talked about it in his match at Saturday Night's Main Event last week. they were like, oh, he's here to create a viral moment. And then the viral moment ended up have nothing to do with Logan Paul. It ended up being Ron Killings returning was the viral moment. But I feel like maybe now, if I wonder now if like they tried to cross over more, like if the reaction to them would be different. But then also, you also kind of look at the way TKO is handling things, and people are making the comparisons between UFC and WWE as far as like releasing talent. And they're like, oh, because there's been kind of the backlash with Ron Killings. They're like, oh, that's what UFC does. That's what MMA does. WWE don't. Fans treat wrestling differently and they react differently. So I kind of wonder though if MMA wrestlers now, because it's such a viral thing in WWE, and it's obviously even more entertainment than it has been, that I wonder like if they would be more successful now than they were. Maybe that's why I just kind of, because fans didn't really seem to gravitate towards MMA at the time.
Mm-hmm. And I think the number is like 11 or 13% of the fan base that still crosses over. If we go back 7 to 10 years, it's a much bigger crossover percentage. But
sure,
like you said, they kind of leaned away from it. So yeah, I don't really see a lot of parallels in the product today. You know what the product has more parallels to is the product has more parallels to AEW than it does to UFC, like WWE's product.
Right.
A lot more high spots than you ever saw. They really who they bring in are these like crazy athletes, but not the crazy strongmen or real fighters or whatever. So I think the AEW influence on the wrestling industry also influenced WWE's the type of person that they recruit these days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is a new segment that I've been doing on some of these podcasts because I'm trying to grab really small conversations so that we can put them up on like Reels and YouTube Shorts. I call it the quickest take. All right, I'm gonna give you both a question, and you guys give me your like immediate thoughts about it, and then I'll give mine as well. And Sam, we can start with you.
Okay.
Why didn't we ever get a horseman versus horsewomen feud, do you think?
I think the women involved didn't want it to happen. I don't know if that was the wrestling side of things, not wanting these women to encroach on their territory and encroach on, because they had already before, Charlotte is the daughter of a horseman, and for these 4 women to call themselves that, I think probably rubbed her the wrong way. Maybe the other 3 women as well. And I feel like it was an ego thing. And I think that maybe it was from the MMA side. Maybe it is from their side, Ronda Rousey and Shannon on them. Maybe it's from their side as well. But I feel like there were egos involved. And I feel like Charlotte Flair was probably one of the ones and was like, this is not happening. You're not going to let these women use the nickname of my father's stable. I will not be involved in it.
What do you think, Keila?
I think it was a lot of ego too. I can say Charlotte and also Sasha, now Mercedes, had some issues. I fondly remember her thoughts on wrestling Ronda at the Royal Rumble. She was not thrilled. She was like, this isn't a dream match for me, but I'll do it. I'll do it and I'll make it look good. And she did. But
and because we know the outcome, we know who's winning this one.
Yeah, like there's no debate. So I'll get up for it. I'll get the check. I'll put her over. But it kind of felt like they were the OGs, and then there were 4 other horsewomen trying to encroach in their territory. And I think that 2 of the 4 felt away about it.
So I also think, I agree with both of you, by the way. I think at the time, Ronda has like this 1 year and they're not sure if she's going to come do more or less. Like they're kind of just waiting for her. And I think if she immediately signs up for another year and is full time for another year, I think they eventually get to it. But also, here's an interesting thing to think about, because I didn't even really think about it until I rewatched this show. Like Becky and Charlotte are kind of here, and then it starts to get like this, and Becky just surpasses Charlotte. Charlotte is the baby face, and she gets booed more than anybody else on this show, which was something that has actually aged well, because that's what happens today too. For whatever reason, she is just and I've always liked her as a pro wrestler. I always like her matches, but her persona just rubs people the wrong way. So I do also wonder if Charlotte is no longer the Ric Flair of the group. It has become Becky, and Mercedes is kind of the workhorse of the group, the best wrestler. And Charlotte is kind of, in this weird, is Charlotte Arn Anderson, the Arn Anderson enforcer? She wants to be Rick, and Becky is Rick, so much so that Becky eventually starts calling herself the Man, which is what Ric Flair used to call
loved.
Himself. Yeah, he had a little bit of a fit about that one, huh? But I think the reason why he had the fit is because of the Charlotte Becky kind of stranglehold on who was the top woman in the company.
Right. And then there was the personal stuff. I mean, like, that was just the character stuff, but you could see, especially going back and watching that match, because is that where, back in that time frame, is that when the real life, like, falling out between them happened? Because that match just, they seemed to be, like, it felt personal at some points rewatching. I mean, it did at the time, but also, like, rewatching it, I was like, oh, is that when all this was starting to happen, when they started to not be friends in real life anymore? Because I was like, it felt like they were just trying to one up each other constantly. They were trying to hurt each other, or like, not hurt, like take each other out, but like, just like they were kind of working stiff a little bit.
So they were on the precipice, I will say. The precipice. They weren't there yet, because when Becky got knocked out, like, they were still cool, but I think 2019, 2020, it fell off a cliff.
Okay, see, that's, I was trying to remember what the time frame was, but it definitely seemed like it was starting a little bit then, like, going back and watching, I was like, ooh, they seem to, like, really be trying to, I mean, maybe it was just the one up, just they were trying to one up each other at that point, because like you said, Becky was she was starting to surpass Charlotte, and Charlotte could see it, and she was like, on this all women's show, you are not gonna, because they even read a tweet from Ric Flair during their match, like, so interesting timing back then.
So Dazza is in the chat room. Shout out to Dazza. He says he was watching Jess and Marina in NXT, and they weren't ready. If the Shafir of today was her back then, I think there was more of a chance. All right, so moving right along. Good, quickest take there. We'll throw that up on our YouTube shorts as well. The first match of the Women's Revolution pay-per-view that is finalized is Io Shirai, not Io Sky yet, Io Shirai versus Toni Storm, not timeless Toni Storm, just Toni Storm for the Mae Young Classic Finals, which is the match that made the most sense, but not the match originally planned. Meiko Satomura wasn't signed, and she would lose to Shirai in the semifinals, I believe. And those and while Shirai and Storm both were, and those were the class of the field, but the actual plans were for Storm to face Tegan Nox in the finals.
Interesting.
And what happens is Tegan Nox and Rhea Ripley are having a match, and her knee goes out. And so Rhea Ripley then moves on. Rhea Ripley was supposed to lose that match. Tegan Nox was supposed to be your Mae Young Classic winner of that tournament, but because of the knee injury, they had to change their plans.
That's right. Yeah, and it's funny that because when I went back to look at my Evolution tweets, I had said that I was hoping that it was Meiko Satomura that had made it to the finals, but I was excited for Io versus Toni because it was still going to be a good match. But it was funny because I wanted Meiko in that match, and I didn't know. And then they did pan to the crowd, and Tegan was in the crowd with Rhea Ripley, and that was back when Rhea was still blonde. And I forget, Meiko was with her, and I think there was one other. I can't remember who else was with them when they cut to the crowd. But I had forgotten that Tegan had gotten that far into the tournament.
Yeah, pretty crazy in hindsight.
Yeah, especially.
I mean, just based off of what happened to everyone's career.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, because Tegan was kind of the odd woman out because of, obviously injuries, but also just her, like, booking wise, out of those women, she was not booked well. And now she's not with the company anymore.
By the way, I also wanted to we shouted out Daza. Fernando, obviously, he's a big supporter of our stuff. Want to say shout out to Fernando. Also, Captain Commenter is in here as well. And I'm just going to throw this person's tweet up because I don't want to butcher their name. But they are also in the chat. Do you know how to pronounce the name?
I believe. Well, it's very possible that Power Bombshells and Speaking of Strong Style both pronounce it wrong. But Venkin is with us pretty much every Sunday, and he's often in the when I go check out Jeremy and Steven's show, he's usually there as well. So he's a big supporter, and we
shout out Venkin.
Yes.
Okay, so some more bits and pieces about the show before we get to the results, and then we'll talk about it more in depth. Trish Stratus versus Alexa Bliss and Mickie James versus Lita were originally announced as singles matches, but they were always scheduled to be a tag. They were just early announced as singles matches, and they were going to do an angle and put them together in a tag. Unfortunately, as we get to the show, Alexa Bliss gets hurt and has to be replaced by Alicia Fox in the match. FYI, they went up against the World Series and Sunday Night Football.
Wow.
That's like going up against the Beyonce concert right there. Jeez.
Sounds familiar.
Okay, let's get to the elephant in the room here. They had already gone to Saudi Arabia for one show. Journalist Jamal Khashoggi gets murdered in Saudi Arabia, and everybody is pulling out of Saudi Arabia to do business because of the horrendousness of the murder. I just rekindled all of this stuff with Dave the other day because there's this big discussion about CM Punk going to Saudi Arabia. And when CM Punk rejoined WWE at Survivor Series almost 2 years ago now, I was like, okay, like he has to go back on his word. This is part of his job now to do shows in Saudi Arabia. And so it's funny now because he's going against John Cena and people are saying, oh, what a hypocrite. It's like, yeah, he was a hypocrite on the day that he signed because he was just going to do it.
Right.
But the other thing about this time frame, because I'm reading all of the observers just kind of catch up where WWE's at. John Cena scheduled to be in the tournament that they were going to do. Does Shane McMahon win that tournament? Like somebody funky wins this tournament, I believe. But John Cena is supposed to be in this tournament, and he pulls out. So it's kind of funny that John Cena is throwing subtle shots, or the character that John Cena is playing is throwing the subtle shots at CM Punk for not going to, always saying he wasn't going to go to Saudi Arabia. And John Cena himself pulled out, but he's a heel, whatever. We can forget about that in wrestling parlance. So at this time, Ari Emanuel, who is now the person who owns TKO, he had owned Endeavor, which was the owner of the UFC before they combined UFC and WWE to create TKO. Saudi Arabia was going to invest 10% into Endeavor. Ari Emanuel says, no, we cannot do this now after what happened. So he pulls out of the deal. And everybody other than WWE is pulling away. Vince McMahon determines that I don't think that he knew that they officially could go, but if they could go, they were going to go. And there was lots of, I think I don't know how much Donald Trump was involved in this, but they were looking for kind of like the okay on whether they can go or not. Mm-hmm. Daniel Bryan at the time decides that he's not going. And so they're trying to figure out like a bunch of different ways for Daniel Bryan to not go to the show, but still be on it. They were thinking of doing an empty arena match at the PC with him and AJ. Like they were trying to figure it out. Eventually they just have that match on the SmackDown before they go to Saudi Arabia. And Daniel Bryan just gets beat, and then he gets whipped, and then he gets beat up. And Dave's like, that's a message for anybody who says no to not going to Saudi Arabia. So anyways, The first Saudi Arabia show did not have any women on it, did not have any WWE women on it. The second show was also not going to have any WWE women on it. The reason for Evolution is really a PR move so that they are fighting the blowback of them still having this business relationship with Saudi Arabia. That is your main reason that this show actually happens. And we can argue the goodness that comes out of this show, because I do think there was a lot of goodness about women's wrestling in general coming out of this show, but you cannot explain that or even enjoy that without recognizing the elephant in the room, which is that this show is a PR propaganda show because of Saudi Arabia. I'll let the both of you kind of talk about your feelings about that. You can go first, Sam.
Yeah, it was that for me, the show served two purposes. It was here, have your women's show. It's also PR. And then also it was to attract Ronda Rousey and be like, hey, we actually do give a shit about women's wrestling here. We'll build up our division and we'll tell you, hey, if you sign with us, we're going to have this really, we haven't announced it yet, but we're going to have this big women's show. It's all women and we would love to have you like be a part of it. We'll put you in the main event if you sign with us. It just felt like it was both things is how it came across, but it very much felt like PR. Like we aren't stupid. Like, especially those of us who have watched for a really long time and know how that company tends to operate. Like, we knew what was happening. They were saying it was one thing, but we all knew that this was a lot of people are really mad that we're still involved with Saudi. Not even the UFC is involved in this, but we still are. So if women can't wrestle there, women have to have permission to go to the show in Saudi Arabia. Like, and our female fans aren't happy with that. So let's just do it's something I bring up often with WWE. It's don't look over here, look over here. Like, don't look at what we're doing. Just here, look at this pretty flashy thing. Look at this cool thing here. Don't pay attention to what's going on over here. And this is definitely, the very definition of that.
Go ahead, Keila.
Propaganda 101. It was all about marketing. We knew what time it was because the first Blood Money show went down in the spring of 2018. No women were on the show, and no women were going to be on the show for that November show. So they thought, well, let's try to be progressive here and have an all-women's show mere weeks before we go back to Saudi Arabia, not knowing what would happen in the months after that announcement, because it just makes this all the more grimy. But we knew what the intent was, to basically say, hey, damn, like Jennifer Martin, are you happy now? You get your all women's show. It's going to be headlined by women, all women, everything. Are you happy? You got what you wanted, but it's in the backdrop of Saudi. And that is something that I cannot shake. However, I will always appreciate the efforts that the women put in to make this show what it was, but I'm not going to forget the genesis of why it exists.
Can we fast forward to the end of this show and you have the women on stage, and the one that I was wondering about really was Charlotte. They are celebrating. The baby faces are celebrating. Ronda's kind of in the middle, and it is like they did it, right? Like, that's how us as the fans are supposed to see this moment, as we did it. We put on our own show. It was a success. I wonder how much of those feelings were 100% honest with those women, or if they felt the pressure to act in that moment, or if they really did feel like, hey, we had to put this thing on our backs. We didn't have Roman Reigns or John Cena or Brock Lesnar on this show. It was on us, and we did a great job. Like, how did you feel that they felt as you were watching that part?
I can't remember who it was, because Nikki watched it with me on we watched it together the first time, and then the rewatch. And there's somebody on stage, and she was talking about how they didn't appear to look that happy. And she was like, I don't know if it's because of Ronda Rousey and like how that main event went down, or if it's just, why she's like, maybe the camera just happened to catch her. And I can't remember now who it was. I don't think it was Charlotte. I think it was somebody else. And she was just, and so I, and I didn't think about that the first time. But so, yeah, I do feel like there probably was a sense of accomplishment because they, even though it is these circumstances, they still have to, even though this was a PR stunt, in a lot of ways, you can say they were also set up for failure, being up against the things that they were up against at the time. They probably felt like, you know what, we still did this. Like, we still, for 3 hours, made people realize that, like, women's wrestling is important and it matters, regardless of what our bosses think. Like, these fans here support us, and we did a good job for them.
Keila, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it felt like we got through it. We proved our point, but at the same time, we're still not going to Saudi Arabia. We're still not wrestling. We're still being iced out of this event because we're women, essentially, and we're not allowed to go. They gave us this event on a Sunday night against peak football season. You put us in a building that was dimly lit. The set kind of sucked. I'm not gonna lie, it was very house show-ish. And I was like, this is the best we can do. Like, you couldn't bring a bigger set for this event. That was my initial takeaway. But they felt like, you know what? We proved a point. We went out there, put on a show. The building was sold out. People came to see us. We put on a show, but at the same time, we're still not going to Saudi Arabia. That would have been the actual progress in all of this, to really affirm this revolution of women's wrestling. We did it, but we still can't go to the other show. You just gave us this one to placate us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to shout out 8TBB0359 for realizing how much of this I'm stealing from, or I am influenced from the Ringers, the Rewatchable show. I was like, we could do this for wrestling shows. This is a great idea. All right. So where are we at this time frame? So what movie, song, and TV show were kind of on top of culture in this time frame? I looked it up. The top movie of the week was the Halloween remake.
You mean remakes are still doing big business back in the?
It did tremendous business. I mean, this is 3 days before actual Halloween,
right?
And second place, though kind of at the tail end of its run, is a movie that is near and dear to my heart. A Star Is Born was also kind of nearing its run. I think I saw A Star Is Born. I may have seen it 3 times in the theater.
Wow.
So one of my buddies, who's kind of in our Bay Area wrestling crew, also people have met him at the convention, David Rubio, he and I went to see it together in the theaters. And, it's like, 2 macho dudes seeing this like movie. And we were both just like in love with the movie. And at the end of the movie, he looks to me, actually not even at the end, but there's moments in the movie where he just kind of looks to me and does like the Rock thing, and he puts his arm out and he just like rubs his arm and to say goosebumps, right? He's like goosebumps. And I'm like, yeah, goosebumps. And then I think I even like created a date with someone who we were kind of not really interested in each other at the time, but we're just like kind of hanging out. It's like, let's go see A Star Is Born. And then another time I saw it with somebody else. So I was like, yeah, I just wanted to keep seeing that movie in the theater before it was done. Amazing, amazing film. Okay, as far as song, Keila, there's a current rap star who is also in WWE today. One's name is Travis Scott. He had the #1 song in the U.S. Do you remember what song this may have been?
Well, I know it wasn't Fiend, so that's going to be like completely out of the option box here.
Thank God.
So, I do not remember the song, but I'm glad it wasn't Fiend. So, blessings.
Sicko mode.
Sicko
mode. Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And who would have known, fast forward 7 years, that Travis Scott would be involved in one of WWE's biggest storylines in recent memory? Like, who had that on their bingo card?
So bad.
Sam smoking blunts on Netflix at WrestleMania. I mean, just out there lighting it up in 2025. Who would have thunk it 7 years ago?
Not me.
Jey Uso trying to say it was a contact high. Come on, bro.
Come on, buddy.
Bruh, you were all up in that smoke. Don't go there and say it just passed you by. No, you inhaled, you nibbled, you tasted, and you had a good time.
Just like you and Cody were hitting the sauce at your press conference and saying, "Do you feel him, sir?
Do you feel him?" One of the greatest press conference interviews
And then
of
they
all
tried to
time.
like redo it last week, but it didn't hit as like the last one did. And then we were in the amongst us in Slack where I was, because I was covering it. We were like, are they really like, do they really get drunk again to do this, or are they acting drunk to kind of like replicate it? And we were like going back and forth and trying to figure out if they were really even drunk last week or if they were just pretending they were.
Okay. And then movie or TV shows, The Walking Dead, The Voice, those are kind of what was hot around this time. Okay, the results of this show, we'll go through the results and then we'll talk about some of the stuff. Trish Stratus and Lita beat Mickie James and Alicia Fox. Nia Jax won a 20 women over the top battle royal. Toni Storm pins Io Shirai to win the Mae Young Classic. Bayley and Sasha Banks and Natalya beat Sarah Logan, Liv Morgan, and Ruby Riott. Shayna Baszler beats Kairi Sane to win the NXT title. Becky Lynch retains the SmackDown's women's title in a last woman standing match against Charlotte Flair. Ronda Rousey beats Nikki Bella to retain the Raw women's title. Okay. Now, 8TBB0359 is correct in that this is very Rewatchable's influence, but I'm not creating categories. I'm just asking questions, but those questions may sort of some of them may be similar to the Rewatchables. I wanted to start with what on this show aged really well from 2018 to now. And I was like, man, Trish Stratus 7 years later looks exactly the same. Holy cow.
She does.
That yoga, man. I don't know.
That DDP yoga. DDP is a miracle worker.
Sheesh. She looked exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I thought, and the other thing I thought that really translated well, Shayna Baszler's wrestling style, which I mentioned, the kind of WWE's shift or pivot more to like a high spot style, a big move style that AEW really, really leaned into. I really miss that Shayna Baszler shoot style, not because like that's like my favorite style of wrestling. It is kind of weird to do like real UFC submissions in a pro wrestling ring because one of them is really real and one of them is not. But just the difference in today's wrestling. So for instance, we watched 4 hours of Summer Blockbuster. AEW had a 4-hour block on TV, and there was really good stuff on that show. But I think what the 4 hours exposes, especially if you watch them in some people are watching it all 4 hours through. I'm splitting it up into night and morning. What you realize is how many of the same high spots are being used, how many of the same transitions are being used. And that is just because they know what the fans are going to get into and what the fans really enjoy. I would love to see a Shayna Baszler match thrown in the middle to break up the high flying and the dives and, kind of a lot of the same moves and just break it up. Just throw me a Shayna Baszler. She's going to do mat work. She's going to grapple. She's going to throw knees. She's not slapping her leg. It's going to look completely different. And like, I really, really miss that. I wish one or both companies would bring back something, and it doesn't even have to be this sort of style, just the idea that we have all these matches that kind of have the same beat and rhythms and rhymes. Let's throw something different in just to change it up so that, it's this law of diminishing returns thing that I talked to Dave about. It's like when you have too much of the same thing, even if it's really, really great, you kind of get sick of it. Like, let's just put a pause on some of that so we don't get sick of it, because we're seeing a lot of wrestling on TV these days. So that Shayna Baszler thing really, really stood out to me. I was like, I miss this. I miss that kind of style because it's so different from a lot of the wrestling that we see. What did you have, Sam, for your list of things that aged well?
I think the putting Io Shirai in a big spot was correct, because obviously she's amazing. She's currently a champion. She has, pushing her the way that they did has been one of the smartest things they've done. And I had forgotten actually that Nia Jax won that battle royale. And she got really emotional. She was crying and things after the match. And
was she a babyface in that match?
I think she was. I believe she was. Yeah, I think she was a babyface. And it's funny, when I went back and was looking at my tweets about it, I wanted Ember to win, which is not a surprise because I love Athena. Athena is one of my favorites, and I wanted her to win, but I wasn't mad at Nia winning. And then you see like how Nia has progressed in WWE and how she's, especially in the last year and a half or so, she's really come into her own and really like she has really become, I guess what they thought she was going to be back then in 2018. And so it was interesting that how that kind of played out. But then also I was watching it, the way that Toni Storm wrestled that match. And then of course she finished with the Storm Zero, which is still her finisher. But it was interesting. I was watching and I was like, these women are both champions in two different companies.
Absolutely.
And which is, a testament to them. And, that ended up being, at the time, it was my favorite match from that show. And it still was my favorite match rewatching. I really liked the last woman standing match between Charlotte and Becky. That was like a real close second. But the Io Toni match was my favorite from that show. And Toni, of course, she's one of my favorites now. And I love Io Sky. I think she's phenomenal. And so like those, I think some of those things aged really well with the women that they gonna like pick to show and to kind of, especially and I guess also in a WWE, system where like these are the women that we're going to push forward. And they kind of like, I guess they already knew like kind of where they were going with things. And of course, and again, Tegan I had forgotten that Tegan had gotten that far into the tournament. And so they kind of pivoted there, but I think it was the right call to go with Toni and Io.
If you're WWE, there are some people who you're kind of bummed out that you kind of screwed up and missed out on. I think number one, got to be Toni Storm. It is a character that is unique. And here's what probably pisses them off the most. It is a heavily Tony Khan influenced character. Like Tony Khan had, I don't know how much of the idea was Tony Khan versus Toni Storm's, whatever that magic juice together, that collaboration together.
I think you throw in some RJ City.
And yeah, now and the helpfulness of that as well. But WWE's got to be kicking themselves for this one. Like, how did we screw Toni Storm up? She was young. Right. She had charisma. Yeah. She was a good wrestler. That one seemed like we can't. This is almost unscrew-upable. And then she goes and finds herself in AEW, which is great.
And it's also, it's the treatment of women. That's why she left. She didn't like the way she was being treated. They were wanting her to, basically to strip down for no reason. Like they were wanting her to just do, and they were wanting to sexualize her. Where, of course, yes, now we do see her in a sexualized way, but it's on her own accord. She has the bodily autonomy.
She's parodying the idea of it.
Right. And she has the bodily autonomy to make that choice. Nobody, like, because I know when Toni cut the promo where she strips down, to her bra and underwear, and then people were like, well, she didn't want to do that in WWE, but she is the one who chose it. It made sense for her character. Toni is the one, it's not Tony Khan. No other man was telling her, hey, go out there and take your clothes off. She did that on her own accord. She did it because it pushed the storyline further. It pushed her character further. It all made sense. It wasn't just for the sake of this is what sells to male wrestling fans. And so I feel like, so that just goes to, I think that Toni is the perfect example of like, you can have all of these things, but if you treat women a certain way, they're going to go, now they have an alternative. They have somewhere else that they can go, to that will, treat them better as far as, that type of stuff.
Keila, what has aged well with you from this show?
A few things. As you mentioned, Trish Stratus does not age ever in life. And I do want to make note that Stephanie McMahon did not invent nor create women's wrestling in the year 2018. That did not happen.
That show.
You know, I've been a wrestling fan for well over 25 years.
Right.
And we had the
Same.
revolution back in the early 2000s with Trish and Lita and Jazz and Victoria and Gail Kim. May I go on, because that was a revolution.
Phoenix was, yeah.
Beth, that was a revolution that was televised. It was not pandered to us. They just did it. Fit Finlay took a bet and said, bet, I will do what I got to do. And he did it. So let's not like pretend as if women's wrestling did not happen in the early noughts, because it did. So Trish is ageless. I think about Lita and how she actually made it to Saudi Arabia a few years later against Becky Lynch. And she had her official swan song as a singles wrestler. So like that full circle for her after not being able to go to the second Saudi show. Then I think about Toni Storm and Io Shirai at the time, and the importance of the Mae Young Classic. And I go back to what Tony said recently to Mercedes at the end of Dynamite, that I got my trophy too. I got my flowers and I still had to go. And it was a great callback to that match and that moment to see where they are now. And Io being one of the most over women in all of WWE, to see her ascent in the last year or so has been incredible. Becky and Charlotte is my favorite match still from that show. And Becky's a better wrestler now versus then, because the story with Becky was her knees and having that low center of gravity. She's got gravity now 7 years later. So she's evolved and upped her game. But I still love the brutality of that match, the violence of it, and how they both just stepped up. So those things for me aged well. Nia Jax as well. Even though she yeeted Zelina very recklessly over the top rope. I'm not going to forget that. But like, girl, like, not your reputation now. That was another mark on you. But I did love the sincere emotion of that win for her. And she has improved so much in her second run in WWE. All of her matches are not perfect, but when it's time to step up in big championship matches, she's done great. So I can't knock Nia. So those are the things I take away from the show that I still look back on and say, I feel good about it.
If Trish Stratus, Jennifer Lopez, and Halle Berry were like, here's a piece of gum, this will allow you to not age like us, I think everyone would buy it and they would believe it. I would too. I would buy some. Like the three of them, man, they do not age. Okay, now let's go to what hasn't aged well. And I will start with the opening video package to this show, which was supposed to be inspirational, was super heavy-handed.
Oh, God.
The message sucked. I'm just like gobsmacked of the message that they were sending, which is, we never thought this would happen. And thank you to WWE for making this happen. And I was just like, wow. Even, you know, it's worse now, but it sucked so bad then, especially as they're doing the same thing on these Saudi Arabia shows, because you have to, that's part of the deal. You have to show these videos about Saudi Arabia, you know, progressing and all of this stuff, which is also propaganda. But they had their own created propaganda on these women's videos of them have, you know, Molly Holly, oh my gosh, I was the only wrestler, you know. I was like, that's not a good thing. Like, you know,
right.
Same with Alundra Blaze or Medusa. They didn't even let her call her. They didn't even let her go by Medusa, her own actual name that she is used for her professional life, and they make her go by this Alundra Blaze that she used for like a year and a half. Like that, I'm like, how can you say that you're progressing and then you're forcing her to be in this crappy character who she hated? Like that stuff did not age well
in that outfit.
The other a couple of other things for me, and then I'll turn it over. Renee and Beth doing the announcing, considering they're both kind of in AEW right now, didn't age greatly. We'll see about Beth. I assume that, you know, if she wants to,
her voice is at least there on Adam Copeland's track.
Yeah.
Her voice at the beginning.
Babyface Ronda. I like Ronda in the ring, but when she's got to sell and she's got to do her pretend sell face, not exactly the best at it. Wasn't exactly a compelling selling babyface, because in the back of our minds we're like, okay, she could literally just snap her leg off if she wanted to. Like this is not necessary. Last one for me. No Rhea Ripley on the TV portion of this show, but there is a reason for it. and you guys will laugh at this reason. So Rhea Ripley was the UK champion at the time. She's on the opener, but it's a dark match where she beats Dakota Kai. They didn't show the match on TV because the tournament that she won was not yet on the network. They didn't have the whole thing up yet. I guess they must have delayed it. They had taped it back in the day, and they were going to put it out weekly as if it wasn't, people could find out if they wanted. So instead, they just did not put Rhea on the show, which I was like, come on, man. Like, no, who cares? Like, it kind of reminded me of how they basically announced that Vikingo was the AAA champion before he actually won.
But hey, they geo-blocked it in Mexico.
Oh God. As if news doesn't travel, but it's like
as if they
the same thing with
those websites.
The same thing with this is like they just didn't want to spoil their weekly show, which I get, but still, like, why is it so delayed and all of that? But I just like, man, Rhea's like the goods. Like, we should show her on this show, or maybe just have it be like, don't come out with the title, just do a regular match with no belt, and then you can put her on TV and pretend she hasn't won the title yet. So, anyways, okay, Sam, what were some of the things that you didn't think aged well?
I mean, just God, where do I start? It just didn't age well with because they hyped it up as like, of course, we do have Paul Levesque's comments about like, well, if the fans want it, but I mean, you have the book. Well, he didn't at the time, but like, you have the book. You can book the show. Like, you can make those decisions. And I saw a comment the other day. It was in relation to something else, but it was like, the women were like, we broke this glass ceiling. Well, who put that ceiling there?
Mm-hmm. Who built it back up after the early 2000s?
Here's a question.
Who broke it? Stephanie McMahon, apparently.
Yes, she did. She did say with Triple H's sledgehammer.
Here's a question. Remember when the Give Divas a Chance hashtag or whatever that was that started? Did that come out of the post WrestleMania 31 Raw? Because I remember being at that Raw.
Was that when it was? It was around that area. It was, the women had been, if I remember correctly, and Keila may also, remember more correctly, but that it was like, that's when the women were getting like 2-minute matches. But also, I think some fans say no, it had nothing to do with that. But I seem to remember, at least from like, maybe it was my timeline that I was seeing, that it was also, people didn't like that the Bellas were on TV and getting these things because they were more reality. When people wanted wrestling like the Beth Phoenixes, the Natalias, that type of women's wrestling, and we were getting the stuff that the divas were doing, and even still we were getting 2 and 3 minute matches. But Keila, you may have a different recollection of that hashtag.
Oh, Gigi just unlocked a memory of time that I am going to seize at this very moment. Because of the timing of where we are and what has recently happened. So I'm going to be like Sophia from the Golden Girls. Picture it. It is the year 2015. We are a few weeks away from WrestleMania 31 at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. There was a fateful night of Monday Night Raw, and it was a Bella's match. I think it was Nikki Bella or Brie. It was a Bella for sure versus Paige. And the match went 2 minutes. On the very same episode. The irony of this happening 10 years later. R-Truth, now known as Ron Killings, comes out and he says, hashtag give R-Truth a chance because I want a shot at the IC title at WrestleMania. It's all I want. It's all that I need. Hashtag give R-Truth a chance. That very same night, the fans co-opted that hashtag, took it, flipped it into hashtag give divas a chance. And then AJ Lee, who was on her way out the door, did not give a single damn anymore. Clocked Stephanie McMahon on Twitter about equal pay and representation. And Stephanie was mad. And then Vince, or his PR person, got on his handle and said, we hear you. We're listening. It took
Where have I heard that before?
It took 3 years to fully listen, but that was the genesis of hashtag Give Divas a Chance. I'll never forget
about the R-Truth part.
Yes,
I
never forget it.
Great.
I've forgotten that part.
And memory.
But yes, you do. That's why I was like, she may remember it differently than I do. And one of the things I always do remember, though, going back to that hashtag, was Corey Graves. And that's when he made it to my hate list, because he was very just dismissive of the hashtag, dismissive of the way women fans felt and the way fans of women's wrestling felt and the way the women themselves felt. And he was like, they get the same amount of time. They should, it's on them if they get 2 minutes or 20 minutes or, whatever the thing. He's like, it's up to them to maximize those minutes. And if they can't, that's on them. And he was blaming the women for the fact that they were getting 2-minute matches and weren't getting over. And he's pretty much been on my shit list ever since then. Then he tried, I feel like a few years ago, maybe it's because of who he married, he like backtracked a little bit, but I was like, no, we remember Corey.
Walking your truth, Corey. Walking your truth in that moment.
Here's why I was wondering about the timeline of that, because I remember going to the Raw after WrestleMania 31. Now, it's a heavily international crowd, right? So I don't know who to blame, like who was doing what. But I remember there's like a women's match. It may have been the Bellas. And there's just so much fan catcalling going on during this match that I was kind of getting just frustrated. Like, okay, like, can we find who these people are? And can we just kick them out of the building? Because this is making... I can imagine the women in the ring are uncomfortable. It's making the fans in the building uncomfortable. And it was like this weird thing where I was like, man, what era of the world are we in? And yet maybe that has aged the best, because I feel like that's happened more often than ever in the last 4 or 5 years, or maybe go back to 2016 with the Trump regime. It's almost like that idea of, we can be super vocal and put people down and, treat women in a certain way. Like that kind of thing has almost been, they're trying to normalize it again. But I remember being at that WrestleMania and going like, gosh, this feels like so outdated. Like, why are these dudes allowed to do this to these women? And like, we need to kick them out of the building. But yeah, that's why I was wondering if it was during that same time frame, because I remember just an ugliness around how the fans were sort of hijacking things back then and treating women's wrestling. So great knowledge, but again, Keila.
Yeah.
All right. So what is the most 2018 moment of this show? I answered this by saying just the Bellas, and they're back again, right? Like Nikki Bella was just on television, and Brie says, oh, you just got to wait and see. I'm assuming she's going to be back too. They kind of, they retire or they leave the business right before WWE kind of picks back up. So they've missed this rise in the company, just because they left and they were doing other things. And Nikki became a quasi celebrity in a way, because she was on Dancing with the Stars. They were very famous from the Divas shows and the Bellas shows. Like, I know people who came to WrestleMania 31, and they were female fans who weren't really fans of WWE, the product, but they knew all the storylines because of the Bellas shows. And they were like, that's how I keep up with what's going on with the product. So I think Nikki and Brie both were probably a little bit more famous than most people even realize, as far as like to that pop culture, that reality TV industry. But yeah, I just think the Bellas are the most 2019 thing. And yet here we are again in 2025. And I think they're going to be back.
Yeah.
What do you have, Sam?
Well, and going back to that, and I immediately, when I heard it, it just annoyed me so much. And we're still doing it in 2025. Is before the main event, but they were recapping how we got to Nikki Bella and Ronda Rousey, and they're playing these like insults to each other. And Ronda says to her, or because Nikki's like, Nikki and Brie are like, we knocked down all these doors for women. We've done these things. And she said, the only door you knocked down was John Cena's. And I just remember the rage I felt when I heard it, and then hearing it again. But I think what pissed me off even more was, on Monday night when Nikki was brought back, Liv Morgan said to her, I have all these things you don't, including a man. When the fact that Nikki doesn't have a man right now is because she divorced the husband that she was involved in a domestic violence situation is. And that just drives home the point of what WWE, how they make women speak to each other, for one thing. And then also, they see Nikki Bella as nothing more than John Cena's ex-girlfriend. And at the time, they only saw her as John Cena's girlfriend, the woman he proposed to in the ring. And it's just everything about her, to them was revolved around John Cena, which is interesting when Liv Morgan's character frequently revolves around Dominic Mysterio, not her title, not her. They strip these women down of their accomplishments to who their partner is or who their partner is not. And so that I was like, so that was very 2018, but also it's still very 2025. And that did not age well at all.
What like, obviously Nikki, I think Nikki sees that she's got value. She has a name. So if she wants to come back to wrestling, she definitely has some leverage, I'm assuming, as far as coming back. But like, just the idea, how does my character progress? And they're like, no, it's not going to progress. We're just going to make fun of you for the same reasons we did. Like that right. was what it felt like when she was on TV on Monday.
Well, and it's, we go back, and I want to go back to the point that you were talking about with the CM Punk as a hypocrite for going to Saudi, but also like they put him in this situation to make him go to Saudi. And I saw somebody pointed out last night, and it's something I've been going back to a lot today, was like, they still find ways to be petty to people. And it was like, you left us, went to work for this other company, we're their champion, and then you had to come back to us because, you got fired, but we're still going to punish you. Like, we remember when we made, Dusty Rhodes had to wear the yellow, the tweet had pointed out the polka dots and the Kiss My Ass Club and the people. So they find their ways to get back at people. And in this way, it seems like almost they're getting back at CM Punk for leaving and for the tweet that he sent out about the Miz. But then it also seems like they're doing the same with Nikki Bella. Like, you left us, even though she didn't go to the other company, you left us, you did these things, and you are nothing more than John Cena's ex-girlfriend to us. And you will bring in some fans for Evolution. Some people will tune in to see you and see what you're doing. But that's all we see you as.
I wonder how much Triple H remembers, or how much he kind of holds in the holster for whenever he needs it. When CM Punk left before WrestleMania, and the idea was like, no, dude, you're gonna be happy. You're gonna wrestle. I think this was wrestle Triple H at the WrestleMania before he left. And what did CM Punk call him? Like, dork son-in-law. I don't want to wrestle you, dork son-in-law.
Doofus son-in-law.
Doofus
son-in-law. Doofus.
Like,
apparently that
does he have that? Does Triple H have that in his back pocket? He's like, I can't wait.
And that's always like, I always think Paul called him. I always remember Paul called CM Punk a skinny fat ass. And promo. And just, but I was like, where this man, like, Paul Levesque is Vince's son-in-law, and he was raised, like, he knows that, like, this company is the pettiest of petty. Like, you don't get much more petty as far as wrestling goes than Vince McMahon. And he learned all of that. He watched it for decades. He's invested in it. He's married into it. Like, I'm not surprised to see all these petty things playing out. It's just on brand for a company that I have watched for, 25 plus years. To see these things still happening in 2025 is nothing, is not a shock.
And you know what Triple H would say if you asked him? He would say, "You enjoying the show? All part of the show."
Actually,
yes.
That was my answer to the first question. My the first question was like, nah, it was okay. It was so.
No, I often have to say is I get paid to watch this. Otherwise, I would not be here.
Keila, anything that stood out as like 2018 in a nutshell right here as you were watching?
Well, I do want to preface your Paul Levesque comment by also adding, it's what we do. I just want to add that part in there because he'll say that at every press conference. Take a shot every time he says that. So it's what we do.
Yeah.
I be petty
Right.
all the time. It's what I do.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I will have to co-sign and say that it's the Bella Twins in 2018. And we're going back to 2025. We need y'all for Evolution too, y'all. We need y'all to sell some tickets.
Uh-huh.
We're going up against Beyonce and All-Star Weekend at the Battery in Cobb County. We need y'all to pull some numbers for us if you don't mind. And they said,
Right.
sure. Now, I will say that I've seen a lot of discourse on social media about the importance of the Bella Twins, and a segment that aired on Monday Night Raw with Io Shirai, or Io Sky now, because we're still in evolution mode from 7 years ago, Io Sky, and saying that she paved the way. And people freaked out. She paved the way for Io Sky to be a wrestler. I was like, listen, you can say whatever you want about the Bella Twins. From 2013 to 2019, Total Divas was appointment television in my house. I enjoyed that show. It was full on shenanigans. It was scripted as I don't know what, but I had a time. Because of Total Divas, I got introduced to the greatness of Big Jim, okay? I appreciate that show. That was the Real Husbands of WWE right there in the flesh. I enjoyed it. The saga of Nikki trying to get a ring from John Cena. That was a storyline saga that went on for seasons. And yes, we know how it ended, but I don't want Nikki to be defined by that. And I think that's what WWE is stuck on. Even now, as Sam mentioned, like we go back from where we were in 2018 with Ronda Rousey saying that line to being where we are this past Monday with Liv saying a similar thing. Like, can we not have Nikki's value tied to a guy? She broke down her own barriers. It's not her fault of how her division was booked 10,
Right.
15 years ago. She's not responsible for that. She just happened to be around at a time when WWE did not give a single damn about women's wrestling. And we can drag Paul Levesque all day long, but I will give him his flowers by saying, yes, you created a foundation in NXT in 2012, 2013 with Paige and Charlotte, and you built that foundation. You laid the groundwork for what we see now. And yes, you have imperfections in terms of how you book the women's division, but I will give you kudos to that. But it is not Nikki's fault. It's not Brie's fault that the main roster, that Vince McMahon was behind the 8 ball for a lot of that. And so I feel like they've been playing from behind both times with Evolution 1 and 2, that things have morphed in that time again, but it feels like they're still stuck in your only worth is tied to who you're with. And for me, that isn't it in 2025. We got to be better than that. And I do hope that Nikki and Brie have the autonomy to be able to tell a story that's their story, to end things on their note, and it's not being dictated out of pettiness.
Well said. I think 2 things. For one, I interviewed Moxley like several times. We're probably going on like 5 years now. I actually don't remember the time frame. It's either 2020. It was during the pandemic sometime, because that's why he was just like, we're not doing anything. Let's just do some interviews. I was like, okay. And he's so I asked him about being on the show because he was there when Renee was on it. And he was just like, I don't even remember exactly the verbiage, but he was just like, yeah, like just sitting around, like doing nothing, just waiting, like, and then you do like one thing and then you stop. Like he, just the process of it all was he was not a big fan of. The second thing, so you guys remember the Netflix debut of Raw where they brought back everybody, and everyone's just in the front row, and then they're there for like 10 minutes, and then someone else is in the front row.
Yeah.
So Nikki Bella's in the front row, and I see on her left, so on my right on the screen, is Bill Simmons, who's this idea of the rewatchables I'm literally stealing for this podcast, the Watchback. He is on his phone. And I'm like, oh, why is he so, like, he's not even waving at the camera. Like, why is he so dialed in on his phone? And so then Nikki Bella starts doing the Bella twirl thing. And I was like, oh, he's being really disciplined because he does not want to become a GIF by like turning his head to look at her do this Bella twirl. So he's like studying his phone like so hard. I got a big kick out of that one. Okay, so let's go to best cameo on the show. I mean, I think I go to the Battle Royal because that's where you kind of got the old school wrestlers. And there was a big current version of WWE women versus the old school divas in this Battle Royal. There's like a split division. I got to give it to Alundra Blaze because I go back to when Medusa Michelli, by the way, was wrestling in the AWA. And she was like post Sherry Martel, who was actually a really good wrestler herself before she became Scary Sherry in WWE. And Medusa was very impressive. Long career, going to Japan, does stuff in WCW. Some of that stuff also does not age well in WCW because she's kind of used as this like obsessive woman. I forget who with Colonel Rob Parker. So like just like not great characters. So anyways, she goes to WWF at the time, and it's like, oh, WWF doesn't even have women's wrestling, so they have to create a division around Medusa as Alundra Blaze. Obviously, that doesn't end well. Goes back to Nitro, drops the belt on TV. They get sued for doing that, by the way. And you know, her career in WCW wasn't that great either. Like I've talked to her about it. So the idea that she comes back into this match was very surprising to me because it is the opposite of kind of what she stood for as a performer in her day when there was almost no women's wrestling. It was like her and like maybe a couple of other people that they had to fly over from Japan just so they would have people to wrestle her. And so you see her come out and I was like, okay, like this is actually pretty cool until they put her in the old Alundra Blaze costume, which makes her look so ridiculous because this woman is probably in her, if I were to guess, she was in her early 50s at the time, or maybe late 40s, but she was in great shape for her age. And they put her in this suit that made her look not great. Like it did nothing for her to show the strength of that character. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. I was so sad when I watched it back. I was like, this is not the Medusa that I remember. But there were many like that. And there were some others. The other one that stood out was Mandy. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about Mandy.
I did
Mandy
too.
Rose. Oh my God. That was one where I thought, I'm like, she's a good athlete. She has a good look. She can talk. She's going to dial in. She's going to do the same thing that Trish and other women did where they're like, okay, here's my opportunity. I'm going to learn how to wrestle and I'm going to be a big star. And it just never happened for her. And, you know, she's still doing her thing with her own content, which is great for her. She owns her life in that way. But those were the two big ones for me where I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot that this happened on this show. What was one for you, Sam?
Yeah, I had completely forgotten that Mandy Rose was in it. And then like it was obviously her and Sonya. And then Mandy eliminated Sonya and Sonya
double crossed her, right?
Yeah, she double crossed her. She pissed her off. Like I'd forgotten about that. So that was cool to see. And yeah, and I'd kind of forgotten, like, I think they brought in like Eve Torres, or they at least interviewed Eve.
She was in the interview, yes.
Yeah, it was just the interview thing. And then like, yeah, so you have like Kelly and like you know, a lot of the like basically the divas.
Tori Wilson came in.
Tori Wilson came in. But I think one of the things that wasn't a cameo, but it was back when they were panning to the crowd and Bianca Belair was sitting there.
Oh, that was a great one. Yes, that was.
Yeah, and I was just like, and I almost didn't recognize Rhea for a second, and then I was like, oh, that's when she still had the blonde hair, and it was like, you know, shoulder length, and I had forgotten. But then, and I was like, look, there's Bianca, and they were like, have her like hidden away. I mean, I guess it's because she was part of the Mae Young Classic and had not, you know, she had been eliminated already. But it was just interesting. So then you see who's out in the crowd, and it's Rhea, Bianca, Miko Satomura, and Tegan Nox. And it's these three of those four. Well, I mean, I guess Miko obviously was more NXT UK, but they did bring her over for a bit. But like, so you see Bianca and Rhea, who would be the future of your women's division.
And hopefully is our WrestleMania match next year. I've been dying for that one.
Please, God.
Please, yes, let us have that. Like, so then you have them, and then just so seeing them, so it's like it wasn't really a cameo, but just seeing them out in the crowd and realizing like, look at where they watched that show from the sidelines, and then now they're two of the biggest women in that company, and have done some really incredible things and have become huge stars in their own right. And so that was just a really cool thing just to kind of see like, this is where they start. They just were sitting there. So hopefully they should both be involved with Evolution too. Hopefully in something big, something worthy of both of them.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool thing to see. And so I do kind of wonder if like a lot of those women they brought in for Evolution 1 that they'll probably, I assume, bring back for Evolution 2, as long as they're like, on good terms and things like that.
Yeah. What about your cameo, Keila?
Oh man, so I love this person so very much, and I enjoyed her cameo in the Battle Royal. I have to talk about Ivory.
Yes,
I
yes.
love Ivory. I've always enjoyed her. And her and Carmella, when they linked up in that match, I was like, this is auntie and niece linked up. And they denied me of them being on screen more together because they were so adorable. I love them. I will always stand an Ivory cameo. She is lovely.
Love it. Do you remember why they started doing the Carmella dance breaks in matches?
No, I'm trying to remember.
I literally just found it in the research as I was looking up.
I don't know if I knew.
You remember when they were doing the mix match challenges?
Yes.
On Facebook of all places.
Yes.
That hasn't aged
well. I watched
content on Facebook.
No, not at all.
So R-Truth and Carmella do a dance break in the middle of a match.
That's right.
And the minutes watched or the viewers just went way up during this small dance break. So they just decided that every time during a Carmella match now, she was just going to do a dance break because of its spiked viewership on Facebook's Mix Match Challenge.
But was it Carmella's dancing or was it R-Truth?
Or R-Truth, yeah, who knows?
I'd forgotten that R-Truth had been with her in the Mix Match Challenge, and they cut to him in the crowd during that, and I was like, and I was like, oh, that's right, they did I forgot about the Mix Match Challenge. They were a team, because I was like, why are they randomly cutting to R-Truth during Carmella? And then I was like, oh, that's right. I had apparently blocked that out.
All right, was there a match or an act that you didn't even remember being on this show? For me, it was the Riot Squad. I was like, wait, like Ruby Riot, okay. Then she went to AEW. Wow, Liv Morgan, who is now a star in WWE. Like, and then the Sarah Logan, who's was on the recent cut list. It's like, wow, what a group. And I'd forgotten that they were even an act as a team until I watched this match, and I was like, this is actually kind of a cool group, but I don't even remember how long they lasted.
Also giving 2018.
yeah.
Like, especially like because Liv had like pink hair and and I had forgotten. Go ahead. I mean, you good.
Yeah, and the blue tongue.
Yes, the blue. Yes, of course. And so I remember them obviously being a trio, but I had forgotten that they had a match. And then I was like, well, you would think like the actual trio would win, but then of course I saw who their opponents were. And I was like, never mind.
Yeah, they're not winning this one.
No, but then I was just watching them and just looking at like where their careers are now, like looking at these 6 women and how like out of the Riot Squad, it's Liv who is the one who's the multi-time champion. She's the one who is featured on TV heavily. Ruby, obviously, she left and she went to AEW. She's become a mother. She hasn't been on TV since she gave birth. And then Sarah was, they tried to do the Valhalla gimmick with her that just didn't work, and they weren't really using her, and she was unfortunately one of the or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, she was one of the people who was cut recently. And then you look obviously at the other side of the ring, and now Mercedes is this huge star. Not that she wasn't then, but like she's a huge star in AEW, and she's wrestling in all these places, and she's got multiple titles. And Natty is still there, but now Natty has gone to Bloodsport, and people are like, wait, where has this Natty existed this entire time? Like, where was this? Like, this is the Natty I would have loved to see on TV. And And then, of course, Bailey was still, I forgot she was Hugger Bailey at the time and was not expecting it at all when she came out. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot this would have been the time that she was still Hugger Bailey. And so it was just an interesting dynamic just watching these 6 women and like looking at where we are 7 years later.
You see who Natty just put over like crazy the other day?
Who?
None other than the newly christened Blake Monroe. Natty's a huge fan of Blake Monroe, I guess.
Well,
so yeah, she was putting her over.
Well, good.
All right, Keila, what about you? Is there anything that stood out in that way for you as far as I forgot that this actor person even existed or this match was even on this show?
Yeah, when I looked back on the card and we watched the show, it is Riot Squad versus Sasha Banks, Natalya, and Bailey. I said, listen, this was the epitome of let's get somebody on the card. Let's throw them all together in this random match because, you know, WWE plays in my face. The tag team match we actually wanted to see was Mickey and Trish versus Bailey and Sasha. That would have been the more attractive matchup.
Yes.
And they said, well, let's go somewhere else with that. And they gave us this kind of like mismatch, 2 matches on the same card, and the chemistry was just not there for me with both matches. It felt like y'all was trying to dance around what the people actually wanted, and I don't know why to this day, because Trish and Lita versus Bailey and Sasha, that made sense going back to what they did at the Warrior Rumble that very same year, because that chemistry with Trish and Sasha at the time, that was screaming for a singles match. Preferably at this show, but they never went there either. So missed opportunities.
I was wondering about that too. And then I watched Lita move around in the ring.
Yeah.
She's moving well.
Yeah. Yeah. My sister
I wonder if that was the reason.
Yeah, my sister asked me too when we were watching that. She was like, "Does Lita have back problems?" And I was like, "Well, she, obviously she broke her neck when she was filming that TV show." And I was like, "It wouldn't surprise me if she had back injuries too, especially considering the way she wrestled." But I was like, because there were a few spots where she moved really well, but there were things you could tell she was
laboring.
She was really
yeah,
she was struggling. And in her appearances since then, you can obviously see that she's slowed down. She's not wrestling all, but she comes back every once in a while, and she looks better, but you could see like there was a lot of stiffness there from her, and she just seemed uncomfortable and things. So I definitely think that they put her in a tag match to kind of hide some of that.
Okay. I will explain why this question exists. So when we did our first Watchback, it was on the original Double or Nothing. And so the question is, you can change one result on the card. Which one is it? And to me, it was Kenny Omega beats Chris Jericho in the main event. And we see the ascent of like babyface New Japan version of Kenny Omega as AEW's first champion. I still think it was the biggest miss of the early booking. This show itself doesn't have the same stakes. I don't think, as far as the winners and the losers, there weren't very many matchups where you're like, oh man, I'm not sure exactly who's going to win here or who should win versus who did win. Though maybe you both disagree. I didn't actually find one where I thought, looking back, they got the result wrong on this one. Was there anything that you saw on this show where you're like, yeah, this person should have won? Maybe it's Ember Moon instead of Nia.
I was going to say that maybe that would be the only one is Ember Moon over Nia, just because and because if you think of the way they booked. I mean, obviously Ember in NXT was quite different, and then especially because they booked her where she wrestled and she never got the title. She never ended up with a women's title because Asuka just went to the main roster and they're like, okay, well, the title's vacated now. So that was maybe the only one, but I mean, I guess looking back at it now, because of the way Nia is booked now, and she has improved so much in this last year and a half, this second run has been so much better for her. I guess it's not really wrong to have had her win that match, but that would probably be the only change. Maybe would be just to have Ember Moon have won that match.
Keila, what did you think?
Ember Moon for me. I was an Ember Moon fan. I will always be a fan of Athena, and she went through so much, especially when she could not beat Asuka on multiple occasions. And I thought this is going to be her ticket And then Nia Jax won, and a part of me died. For 5 minutes, I was a little sore about it. I was like, you know what? Y'all snatched my girl's win and gave it to Nia, but I got over it fast. But yeah, Ember Moon not having her moment when the fans were like clamoring for it made me sad.
So Venkin says Kyrie, because he's a Kyrie fan, should have beaten Shayna because the title reign was too short. I could see that one.
Yeah, I could get. Yeah, I agree with Venkin there.
I mean, I also could have seen EO beating Toni Storm. Yeah, you did. I mean, that's probably the reason. I could have seen EO, but EO and Toni Storm, it's like flip a coin. Like either of them are rightful winners of that. Okay. I have 2 more questions for y'all and we'll get out of here. Guess the Meltzer star ratings. I'm specifically interested in what you think. Not, you could even give what you would think, but I also want you to give what you think Dave gave for the Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair last woman standing match. We can start with you, Sam.
I think, considering it's women's wrestling, if we know how he was giving wrestling, women's wrestling, I would say he probably was favorable to that match, but I'm going to say he gave it a 3.75.
What do you think, Keila?
You know what? We know that Big Dave didn't give that 5 stars into WrestleMania about a month or 2 ago, so we know it wasn't 5. No, it wasn't 5. But I'm going to say it was a very strong 4.5.
Wow, you're really close.
Ooh.
I will read what he said. Best women's main roster match ever.
Whoa.
Up to that point.
Wow.
4 3/4 stars.
Wow.
You know, I think he also very much saw the Becky thing coming as well. Like because he's studying reactions and he's studying houses and stuff. And so I think he saw that coming. He was probably really looking for it. But yeah, I was surprised to see, because when I watched the match back, I was like, okay, this is actually the perfect match for this show if they are second under Ronda, because Ronda and Nikki get the main spot. Now they can do, Charlotte and Becky can do a match, and you're giving it the plunder. So it's going to get, the fan reaction, the Pavlov's dog's reaction to any sort of weapon that is out there, which we still see today. And as I was watching it, I was trying to figure out, because, again, in hindsight, we know that Becky is coming. We know that she's about to ascend and become the biggest star in the entire company. We're not that far away from it, actually. And so I'm reading the reactions and I'm seeing her character. And then I'm also looking at Charlotte. And I do wonder, as I was watching this match, I was like, I do wonder if the fan response to Charlotte was exactly about what we want from Charlotte is what we get from Becky, and what we don't want from Charlotte is what she is giving us. And I wonder if at that point is when the fans decided Becky over Charlotte. And that's literally what exists today. Every time WWE tries to push Charlotte as the top woman, the response from the fans is like, no, we're kind of over it. Again, and this is not coming from me, because I'm still a fan of hers and I really enjoy her wrestling. But it is very clear that no matter how many times she comes back and how many promos she cuts, how many times she tries to be a babyface, the fans are like, nope, that is not who you are to us. And I do wonder if this is kind of where that started, because Becky was the type of character that they wanted Charlotte to be, and Charlotte was still giving them that sort of same style of character.
I think he could be. I think you have a point. I'm trying to remember exactly like where I started to see, because I do like Charlotte. I do enjoy her, and I know some of the booking stuff is like, it's not her fault that they want her to have as many, try to get to the same amount of championships as her dad. But I think that's where a lot of it comes from, is she's, as it was also forever, it was LOL Cena wins. Now it's had become LOL Charlotte wins. And so I think that was just in the way that some people felt about, because I didn't feel this way. Like, I was always a Roman Reigns fan. But the way that people felt like Roman Reigns was shoved down their throat.
Mhm.
I think that people feel that way about Charlotte. And so they just reject her at any time of things that she tries to do, and then you see like she missed all of this time, but like she immediately comes back and comes for the title, and everybody's like, she wants to come for Tiffany because she looks like the younger version of her. She does the moonsault. She's blonde. She's pretty. She's, all of these things. And so I feel like people just feel like that Charlotte is always going to be put in a top spot and that she'll be put over women who they feel is more deserving. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from, is just, it's LOL, Charlotte wins. And I think that's where, but I do think that, going back and looking at this match, I could see where maybe that is where some of that was coming from.
Keila, I was at WrestleMania 32. In hindsight, it's a really bad WrestleMania, even though as I was watching it live, being with damn near 100,000 people in a stadium was actually pretty cool. But they do the 4-way. It's Becky, Charlotte, Sasha, Mercedes, and is Bailey the other one? I forget that match. Maybe it's a 3-way. It may, whatever that match is. So it's pretty clear that Charlotte is scheduled to win that match. But then Sasha Banks comes out with Snoop Dogg. And I'm like, okay, we need to adjust what this thing
immediately
is. Let's flip the winner. Sasha Banks should clearly win this match, because that was like the coolest entrance I'd seen in quite some time. And I do wonder, I always go back to that outcome, because some of what Sam is saying is that Charlotte is a little bit forced. And I do wonder if you switch that and you have Sasha Banks win that match, was that for like the very first women's championship, or it was in that time frame when they switched the Divas belt to the women's belt? I don't remember if that match was for the actual title or not, but I do wonder if you switch that and you try and go to the moon with Sasha from that day, and then maybe Charlotte is like the babyface fighting from behind. How do you think the trajectories of each career changes? Do you think anything changes if Sasha is kind of declared like, no, she's the one we're kind of getting behind at this point rather than Charlotte?
It would have changed everything. I even go back to the Royal Rumble in 2016 after Charlotte and Becky had their match for the championship, and Sasha immediately comes out and gets this huge pop in Orlando. Like, she set the stage for WrestleMania when they introduced the new women's championship. So I think that when you see Snoop Dogg with the ambiance and the entrance and the feathers and the confetti, it's like, come on, like, that superstar right there. And then the match was very good. One of the few bright spots of that WrestleMania. And then look how the match ends. Who's holding someone's leg? It's Ric Flair. He plays a role in the finish of the match. And then Charlotte wins, and they crown her as the basic face of that division. And for a time, I can understand it. But I think that this was WWE miscalculating a lot of stuff. And it even goes to SummerSlam 2018 when they had Charlotte win the championship from Carmella, and Becky Lynch was the person on SmackDown during that entire summer, racking up wins, earning her spot. And then Charlotte magically gets in a triple threat, and then she wins. And then they are so arrogant to think that Becky's going to get booed. And it backfired, and they still thought that Charlotte was the victim in storyline when she wasn't. So they fought the tide until they couldn't anymore. And I think Charlotte from that point forward was never the same.
Your co-host here has got your back. Salty Scott in the house. He was able to check in at the end of this. Okay, last question. And this is a new question. I haven't really workshopped this very well, but okay. We are sometime in the future. We are overtaken by aliens. Aliens have no idea about professional wrestling. And so they know the three of us. They're like, what is this stuff that you all are watching? And they're like, okay, like, they're throwing out paper. What's WrestleMania? And you got to kind of describe WrestleMania to the aliens. So they say, Sam, WWE Evolution 1, What is this? How would you explain in one sentence what this pay-per-view actually was in history?
In history, it was wow, just one sentence. It was a I want to say a celebration because it wasn't. It wasn't a celebration of women's wrestling. It was a publicity stunt to placate women. Like, how do you? It's hard to like if you're being honest. This was a publicity stunt to placate the women in our company who could not wrestle in Saudi Arabia, and to placate women's wrestling fans at the time because of the way we presented women's wrestling. It was nothing more than a publicity stunt. The women did the best that they could with what they were given. And it did feature some of the best women's wrestling because you did have the last woman standing match. You also had the Mae Young Classic finale between, at the time, Io Shirai and Toni Storm. And so it did have some of that in it. But it's, I mean, if you're going to be truthful, it was nothing more than a publicity stunt to placate women's wrestling fans and the women talent themselves.
Okay, I'll give mine so I can give Keila a couple of seconds more to think about hers. But I was thinking something along the same lines, which is WWE Evolution was a PR vehicle to make people forget or run interference on the fact that they were going to Saudi Arabia. And even though they themselves couldn't get out of their own way and just put on a really good wrestling show, the women did a fantastic job at trying to make you forget of the inequalities that exist in women's wrestling. That would be my sentence. Keila, what about yours?
Keila AI in the year 3000 has this answer. WWE Evolution was a strategically marketed event by WWE to sports wash their decision to go to Saudi Arabia by giving the women their own PLE, but the women rose above the bullshit and put on an amazing show.
That's good. I like that one too. Excellent job. And we are done here. Well done. Fantastic. It's I think this is a show that when I thought back to what the show was, I remembered really liking the show and really liking the fact that the women delivered, and kind of forgetting the heavy-handedness and the propaganda aspect. But when you watch it, you are immediately reminded and put back in that time frame, which was kind of made it a little bit of an uncomfortable watch. But overall, I think the wrestling did a good job of making the show stand out in a positive way. So I'm so glad that we were able to do this. Next time that I do this is going to be the Kenny Omega Kazuchika Okada first match at Wrestle Kingdom and the rest of that show with the Speaking of Strong Style bros, Jeremy and Stephen Conway. We're going to do that sometime before AEW All In. So it's next time you will see the Watchback. But Sam, you and Mel are back tomorrow on Sunday morning, or Sunday morning for me, but Sunday afternoon for you.
Yeah.
And what's on the plan for the Powerbomb shows?
Tomorrow we will. So we both had some in real life stuff going on last weekend, so we just made the decision to skip a show last week. But tomorrow, we will be diving into that Liv Morgan promo because we're not going to let that go. We are going to talk about how, since we did miss a week, we are going to talk about how the first 4-hour AEW show had 13 minutes of women's wrestling, and then how they course corrected because lots of people were upset about it. So we're going to talk about that. We are also going to talk about Okada aligning with Don Callis ahead of his match with Omega. And then also, if you may have watched before, Mel's friend John is that lives in Ireland, is a huge New Japan fan. And last year we had him on. He showed all his drawings. He did a BOSJ. Mm-hmm. He did it again this year, so he's coming back tomorrow to talk about his drawings. He's actually going to give some tips too for people who are interested, who are artists or just have want to kind of pick his brain. So we are going to have him on tomorrow as well. So we're looking forward to that.
He's a very cool guy, by the way.
Yes, he is.
Are you going to talk about how my girl, Queen Aminata, just like for whatever reason was like, maybe Tekla talked about her mom or something backstage. Like, is there a reason for her to just like
I didn't even notice it until I saw the tweet later, and we'll probably bring that up too, because it was Queen Aminata deserves better booking. We are Queen Aminata fans over at the Power Show, so that we will probably hit that up. And before I know I'm not going to take Keila's time. I do want to read these 2 quick tweets about Evolution real quick before we leave.
Okay, go ahead.
Because the one thing, when I searched my tweets as the main event was ending, the first thing that came up under WWE Evolution or hashtag WWE Evolution was, at least we know James Ellsworth is on a cruise and can't fuck up any of the women's matches. So maybe that's something that aged or did not age well. And then I did have, overall, WWE Evolution was decent. There were some great matches and some matches that were okay. All of these women deserve the spotlight. I really hope WWE continues to push the women forward and pays them better while they're at it, which obviously was a nod to AJ Lee's comments.
I mean, people are clamoring for her to come back. I don't know. I don't know what her relationship is, but
I feel like for as far as like her neck goes, like I just don't. I mean, maybe she'll make an appearance, but I don't know that she can do anything in the ring for me.
Yeah, I don't want to see her wrestle. I would like to just see her because I think she was a very memorable character and obviously was a big part of those shows. Had a very important role, but I don't know. I kind of like the fact that she was just like, peace out. I'm out. I don't need you guys.
And then you do bring her back after the things that she said. And I mean, technically Stephanie isn't employed there, but she is married to the guy who is. And so, and he's sending her husband to Saudi Arabia.
Are you telling me that AJ Lee is not going to be a guest on Stephanie's Places?
Get out of my head, Gigi. After season 2, she's going to be in Chicago sitting down face to face with AJ. So about that tweet from 2015, let's talk about it.
Yes. All right, Keila, you and Scott will be back on Wednesday morning with The Wrap. And thankfully, I guess, for everybody, we didn't have 50 hours of shows to watch this weekend. I mean, New Japan is happening, and that'll be a good show. But other than that, like, man, last week was really hard for me. I was struggling.
It was a struggle bus, but I'm very happy to have a very calm week. But then we have to remind ourselves by July, it will not be calm at all. It is going to be the busiest weekend since WrestleMania, so buckle up. But Scott and I... counterbooking, hashtag Beyonce got it. So it's a wrap for the weekend. I know what I'll be doing on Saturday. I will be indulging in All In. I'll be enjoying a show, maybe, and watching Saturday night's main event on demand. That'll be my mood heading into that Saturday. But Scott and I will be back on Wednesday morning talking about all things WWE. Who knows what will happen between now and Wednesday with the King and Queen of the Ring qualifying matches continuing on Monday Night Raw. Shaping up to be a nice tournament down the stretch. Final 4 should be very interesting as we also get the contract signing of one Blake Monroe channeling her best Samantha from Bewitched.
Exactly who I think of when I see her.
And mine, which I saw that too, but mine was the Anna Nicole show.
It was a hybrid. Exactly. It's a hybrid of the two.
Yes. I will have images tomorrow on the Power Bombshells to demonstrate where we're going with this, because Bewitched came up too, and I was like, oh, I totally see it. So I will have images tomorrow to show the class.
Yes.
By the way, Keila, I hope you and Scott talk about the opening segment to SmackDown, which is John Cena comes out and he's all of a sudden a mathematician. He's got all the equations down as far as strategy is concerned. Cody comes out and Cody feels like he's back as the top babyface. Randy Orton comes out and I'm like, okay, that's a nice little mix of those three guys. And then LA Knight came out and I was like, okay, I'm out. How quickly can I fast forward? Because like nothing against LA Knight.
No, I don't
but
like it.
It feels like they're always trying to put him in a place where he doesn't exist, and he can talk. He's really good talker, of course. But when you have those three guys, and it's like someone said, "Oh, get somebody's punk little brother and put him in the ring with the legends," and that's how I felt. And so, what does John Cena do? He looks at LA Knight, he goes, "Poof," and he just walks out. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's exactly what I felt as I was watching LA Knight." And then, but of course, it was to set up Ron Killings to attack John Cena as
Twice.
well. So, yeah.
Twice.
I haven't gotten that far. I only got to the first segment.
My bad.
No, I mean the show happened.
Listen, they're utilizing. I guess they're maximizing their John Cena time.
Yes,
they're maximizing it, and they're maximizing because there was a "We Want Truth" chant last night, and he appeared twice.
Yeah, they gave the people what they wanted. I will say that John Cena backstage with Nick Aldis, the funniest segment that John has ever been a part of upon his return was when he turned the cat backwards and we can't hear a thing. We can't hear what he's saying, but it is hilarious. Hilarious. I said, that is funny.
That was one of the high points of that show, and that tells you how well those 3 hours went yesterday when that was like one of the highlights.
Yes, it was a very slow night when John Cena channeling the Dr. Thugonomics backstage with the snapback cap backwards was going off, and we can't hear a thing, but you know he was flowing to Nick Aldis. Like for like 30 seconds, he was just dropping bars on that man.
You know, I have a John Cena signed CD.
Do you?
Ooh, are you going to ever auction it off in life?
I may not. I would not even know where it is. But I had a friend who wrote for the WCW magazine back in the day, and he did a signing when that album came out. He was in upstate New York, which I think is where she lived. And so she went to the thing and she had him sign it to my kids. If I knew where it was, I would like display it. I just don't know where it is. But yeah, I have a signed CD.
I met him a few months after he got called up to the main roster. And I can't remember if this was just before the Undertaker stuff or right around the same time. And I met him. So I was like, I think it was like 18, maybe 17 or 18 when I met him. We was back when all the fans would go stand. I mean, I know they still do, but like go stand outside the hotel waiting for wrestlers. He comes through. He's got his Wendy's was across the street. Comes with his Wendy's bag and his frosty in his hand, and he just gets mobbed by people. And he signed autographs and took pictures. I have a picture with. I've got to find it. It's because it's one that was actually like printed out. But I have a picture with him, and I got him to sign. I had like a little like notebook that I had people sign. And
that's
interestingly enough, that same night, I also met Vince McMahon.
Oh my gosh.
And he signed I met, which now knowing what I know now, and the things that I have written about now, it's just a really weird thing. And then I met Jim Ross that night too. I think he signed there's a ton of wrestlers, but yeah, so I met, So I don't know where that notebook is, but yeah, I met some, that was and then Chris Benoit was there. He didn't sign autographs. He just waved. And my sister was disappointed because my sister was a big fan of his. And and of course maybe it's a good thing that we didn't end up with, photos with him.
In hindsight.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both for being here. I had so much fun doing this. It was a blast looking back. We'll do this again on Okada Omega #1. But check out the Power Bombshells. Check out the Wrap on the Fight Game Media Network. For Sam and Keila, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.